One fateful evening, when I was about 11 years old, my parents called me into the living room, and as soon as I saw what was happening on the TV screen, I yelled out in my mind, "Fuck!" Or to quote myself properly, Scheiße. The guy on TV was explaining to my parents that Counter-Strike and all the other beloved games of mine will turn me into a crazy killer, a school shooter, and if not that, they would at least deprive me of all my social skills. Of course, a heavy debate followed with me trying to defend video games. But what do I know? The old man on TV said they are evil, and he must be right because he read somewhere that they're evil. The debate led to me hiding all the games on the computer in various folders. I simply moved them into the files of some other harmless program and promised my parents that I will only play games that they approve of, like Industry Giant. Still a great game, but after hours of building train lines and keeping your economy prosperous, you just want to fire up 1.6 or go nuts on a Half-Life deathmatch server. In Germany, the most evil game was Counter-Strike. Our outrage community gave CS and first-person shooters in general the lovely nickname Killer Games. The most heated debates in the US, as far as I remember, were about Quake, Doom, and of course Grand Theft Auto. And I could go on and give countless examples of politicians and media figures from all over the world making ridiculous statements, but to sum up the general media and political consensus from back in the days, here's someone everybody knows: Hillary Clinton.
According to the most comprehensive statistical analysis yet conducted, violent video games increase aggressive behavior as much as lead exposure decreases children's IQ scores.
By the way, she's just the most prominent example. Politicians from all sides spewed this bullshit, an effective way to piss off first-time and future voters. And the mainstream press also kind of shot themselves in the foot there, cause that was a great way to create distrust. We played these games every day and just knew they were bullshitting everyone. That was not the truth. And they were especially bullshitting our parents, who blindly believed them for the most part. I guess the term fake news kind of applies here, doesn't it? The whole situation feels kind of similar to how the Wall Street Journal just committed integrity suicide in front of the entirety of YouTube. But well, the years passed and the topics were forgotten, up until recently. If you have seen our video, Germany to ban Counter-Strike, the senseless debate continues, then you'll know what I mean. And when my girlfriend and I were at the shooting range a few days ago, I noticed they are now offering the exact Glock from CSGO. So we decided to test one of the claims made back in the days. German media told us that school shooters practice their aim with video games.
Erinnern Sie sich noch an den Jungen, der in seine Schule marschierte und unter Lehrern und Schülern ein Massaker anrichtete? Er soll mit einem brutalen Videospiel das Zielen trainiert haben.
I've been playing first-person shooters for about 15 years, and one of the most played ones is Counter-Strike in various versions. So according to their logic, I must be an absolute master with the Glock compared to my girlfriend, who never played Counter-Strike in her life, and generally prefers games like The Witcher over first-person shooters. Of course, this is not a scientific test, we are just taking the piss at a ridiculous claim here. So what did we do? Long story short, we both put 5 rounds down the range with a Glock 17 on a target like this. The goal was to put all rounds into the center section to score 5 points per hit. We'll begin the test with the non-FPS player. So here are the results of the non-FPS player. Next up, of course, the FPS player. And here are the FPS player's results. I would say her results are even a bit better than mine, because I almost went out of the target zone here. I tried to concentrate all my shots on one place, it didn't work out that much. So I guess I need to play some more Counter-Strike, don't I? So as we already knew before, it doesn't really make that much of a difference whether you play video games or not when it comes to firing real guns. Oh, by the way, we made the reverse test a few days later. We went ahead and played some Counter-Strike. We tried it with CSGO and 1.6. And well, the result was not that surprising.
You need to aim at the enemy with the crosshair. You killed one! Ah. Yeah, your first kill! High five!
It is the same way with any video games versus real life. Being great in Guitar Hero doesn't make you a great guitar player in real life, and vice versa. So in conclusion, being able to shoot guns in real life does not prepare you for video games, and for God's sake, you cannot practice your aim with video games for a real life shooting competition. Just in case this might come up in the future, no, you cannot practice shooting real life guns in virtual reality. Virtual reality does not feel and behave like reality. There is no recoil that you feel pushing back against you. It's not so loud. There is no smoke that you inhale. You cannot burn yourself on hot parts if you hold it wrong, or a hot shell ejects and lands right in your cleavage. And maybe most important, in VR you cannot seriously hurt anyone if you don't pay attention. Furthermore, real guns weigh a lot more than a controller. You cannot practice holding a gun steady with a 200 grams plastic controller. Even playing with airsoft guns isn't like firing a real gun, even though that's certainly a lot closer to it than holding a VR controller or a computer mouse. Here I am firing a Kalashnikov. You can see it pushing back against me as I shoot. And take a look at my cheap Chinese GoPro knockoff. The gun's blast moves it every time I shoot. As you can see, the recoil is very controllable with a nice shoulder stock. And also I am firing in semi-automatic here, so recoil is not that much of an issue. It's just more a small inconvenience. But when we remove the shoulder stock, you can see how much boom there actually is. Here's my reaction to firing an AK with a folded up shoulder stock for the first time. To my surprise, I hit the target.
That's another bounce.
Oh, and also, shooting on targets with iron sights is a lot harder in reality than in video games. On this 50-meter range, I really had to concentrate to line up the shot, though on the other hand, I am not an experienced shooter. One thing I can say for sure though, having a modified AK with a less basic sight attached is a lot more convenient. Also, customizable buttstock, great invention. But well, enough about guns now. I think I've made my point very clear. Real guns and games are very different. You cannot practice shooting in Counter-Strike or Doom, and also not in virtual reality, even if the game involves you going through steps like loading a magazine. Let me end this video by spreading some optimism for the future. After that horrible shooting in Germany last year, the claims that Counter-Strike is to blame were made again, and alongside came calls for banning games like Counter-Strike. But here are the good news. The calls were fewer than in the past. And there was only one really prominent voice making those ridiculous statements, our Minister of the Interior. And that is why I mocked him in the last video on the topic, because he boldly went where the discourse had been before.
Germany, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the Federal Minister of the Interior. His continuing mission, to exclude real reasons, to seek out new lies and new misinformation, to boldly go where the discourse has been before.
Even the very same media outlets which in the past so confidently agreed with the good minister and spread ridiculous misinformation about games, even they changed their minds in the past few years and they called him out, saying clearly he is scapegoating. Of course, not all outlets went in the right direction, but the same station which told us that school shooters practiced their aim with video games years ago aired a segment stating, "A connection between video games and aggressive behavior and increased violence has never been proven." Seems like, at least in Germany, video games made it into the mainstream, and I think that counts for most countries. Today, attacks on video games and gamer culture do not come from the political establishment, be it the moderate left or the right, because they realize the video game industry is an economical force that has to be taken seriously. Lately, video games came under attack from the fringes of the political spectrum, probably most prominent Anita Sarkeesian and her famous Frequency team. But what they do can be summed up with, history sometimes repeats itself. Back then, video games make you violent. Now, video games make you sexist. Of course, people who played the games they choose to show on Feminist Frequency to give examples of misogyny or racism or whatever is the flavor of the day know that these examples are taken out of context. They are cherry-picked examples or even absolute misrepresentations which just feed into the narrative. I'm going to play you a part of an older video from Thunderfoot now. Here he summons up very nicely one of the most obvious and laziest misrepresentations in Anita Sarkeesian's well-researched videos. The most extreme cherry-picking, back then done with Hitman Absolution. Of course, I invite you to watch his full video, which will be linked in the description down below.
So in summary, this is how Anita Sarkeesian's video deconstructs the representation of women in popular media. She takes a game where you are actively discouraged from killing innocent civilians. Then, because one mission out of 20 involves a strip club, of which only about 2 parts out of 7 are actually in the strip club, and of that only a few % involves the erotic dancers, almost every second of which was used in her video. Then, because no one who actually plays the game kills the dancers, because you get penalized for doing it, she then presumably goes and kills the dancers herself and drags their bodies around so she can claim this.
The player cannot help but treat these female bodies as things to be acted upon, because they were designed, constructed, and placed in the environment for that singular purpose. Players are meant to derive a perverse pleasure from desecrating the bodies of unsuspecting virtual female characters.
Now, we're going to walk past these 2 women doing their makeup. One of them eventually walks toward the area that we're going to go, so we have to watch out for her.
It's a rush streaming from a carefully concocted mix of sexual arousal connected to the act of controlling and punishing representations of female sexuality.
And just like the parents back then, people who don't know the games believe her because she's an eloquently speaking smart woman. There is no giveaway for distrust. She comes across as honest and I actually think that she believes in the things she's talking about. Otherwise, great acting. I think I don't have to go into great depth about Gamergate and Anita Sarkeesian, unless you guys want me to in the future video. If so, tell me. So I'll end this rather pointless video now. I guess this was a late middle finger towards the guys who years ago annoyed the shit out of me. Back then I just didn't have a platform to do that. Have you had similar experiences when you were a kid? News stations bullshitting your parents about video games? Outrageous claims getting you into trouble? Tell us in the comment section down below. I'd be interested in reading other people's stories. Oh, and if the old news stories from the early days of Counter-Strike made you feel nostalgic, I recently found a CD with Counter-Strike Fragmovies. I uploaded one of it. You'll find the link here on the bottom right corner. It's a Counter-Strike 1.5 Fragmovie, Adrenaline 2. So see you guys next time. Till then, have a nice day, and as always, goodbye and guten Tag.
Nice shot!
Counter-terrorists win.